Across town, the Arlington Police Department's statement hit the wires at 7:30. The suspensions of Officers Ronald Baxter and James Cutler reflect our commitment to accountability. Anti-bias training will expand across the force, effective immediately. The words, prompted by Jane's case, were a public olive branch, but for Baxter, reading it in his darkened apartment, and Cutler, scrolling at a bar, they were a warning. The world had changed, and they weren't ready. Margaret slipped away as the meeting ended, her cardigan a ghost in the twilight. Back home, she sat on her porch, the binoculars untouched, their lenses dull. The neighborhood's laughter drifted from Jane's yard, a sound she no longer belonged to. She opened her tablet, the court's apology mandate glaring. Green Oaks had moved on without her, and the mirror of her actions showed a truth she couldn't escape. Jane, tidying the chairs, paused by the pool. The stars were emerging, sharp against the dusk. She'd faced Margaret not for vengeance, but for clarity, and the initiative was a seed planted. Green Oaks was shifting, but the fight wasn't over. Margaret's apology, fragile as it was, hinted at a choice, redemption or defiance, and Jane knew which path she'd watch for. The morning of May 12, 2025, broke over Green Oaks with a clarity that felt like absolution. The sun rose, soft and golden, bathing the neighborhood in a light that smoothed its jagged edges. Jane Hernandez stood in her kitchen, the scent of fresh coffee curling through the air, her long, straight hair tucked into a neat bun. She wore a tailored blazer, her FBI badge clipped to her belt, ready to return to the behavioral analysis unit after a weekend that had tested her resolve. Her tablet lay open, displaying a new case file, a serial killer in Seattle, but her mind lingered on Green Oaks. The pool outside shimmered, no longer a battleground, but a promise of peace reclaimed. Jane sipped her coffee, her dark eyes tracing the horizon. She'd faced prejudice, lies, and a neighborhood's judgment, and she'd won, not by breaking, but by building. Outside, Green Oaks stirred with a new rhythm. Neighbors waved as they retrieved their mail, their smiles warmer, their glances toward Jane's house no longer wary. Ethan's parents, the Wilsons, had slipped a dinner invitation under her door the night before, a gesture of community reborn. Carolyn Thompson, the retired teacher, had announced a racial justice book club, its first meeting set for next week, inspired by Jane's courage. The neighborhood listserv buzzed with plans for the diversity initiative, Ethan's name attached to a sleek website already taking shape. Green Oaks, once stifled by Margaret Kessler's watchful eye, was breathing again, its pulse quickened by truth. Across the street, Margaret's porch was empty, her binoculars abandoned, their lenses clouded with dust. The Kessler house bore a new Licheng Bay sign, for sale. Her court-ordered apologies had gone live at midnight, posted to Twitter, Facebook, and the neighborhood group, each word a public crucifixion. I falsely accused Jane Hernandez and regret my actions. The comments were merciless. Too late. Leave Green Oaks. And Margaret, shattered, had retreated. Her husband, packing boxes in silence, had confirmed their move to a distant suburb, the shame too heavy to bear. Margaret, once the neighborhood's self-anointed queen, was now its ghost. Her departure a quiet surrender to the truth she'd fought. Jane stepped outside, locking her door, her heels clicking on the stone path. She paused, catching sight of Ethan across the street, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "Hey, Ethan," she called, her voice warm. "Ready for that BAU tour?" The teenager grinned, his eyes bright with a dream he hadn't dared to voice before. "You bet, Ms. Hernandez." Jane nodded, a spark of pride in her chest. Ethan's video had lit the fuse, and his courage had changed Green Oaks as much as her own. At the BAU headquarters in Quantico, Jane strode through the glass doors, her team greeting her with nods and quiet respect. Marcus, her colleague, clapped her shoulder. "Heard you took on a whole neighborhood, boss." Jane's laugh was soft but genuine. Just a warm-up for Seattle. She led Ethan through the bullpen, pointing out profiling boards and case files, his awe palpable as he soaked in the world of cybersecurity and justice. "Keep that fire, Ethan," she said, handing him a visitor badge. "We need people like you." Ethan's grin widened, his future no longer a vague hope but a path taking shape. Back in Green Oaks, Jane returned that evening, the sky now a canvas of pinks and purples. She changed into a sundress, her hair loose, and stepped out to her pool. The jazz was back, Coltrane's notes weaving through the dusk, and neighbors wandered by, some stopping to chat. Mr. Singh shared a joke, Carolyn mentioned the book, club's first title, and even Carol Ferguson waved, her earlier guilt softened by resolve. Jane smiled, her lemonade glass cool in her hand, the pool's ripples catching the last light. Green Oaks wasn't perfect, but it was trying, and that was enough for now. Inside, Jane sat at her kitchen counter, her tablet open to the Seattle case, but her thoughts drifted to Margaret. She didn't hate her. Hate was too heavy a burden. Margaret's exit was a consequence, not a victory. A reminder that prejudice burned its wielders as much as its targets. Jane's fight had been for more than herself, for every person told they didn't belong, for every community that could choose better. She closed her tablet, the jazz swelling, and felt the weight of the weekend lift. The stars emerged over Dye. Green Oaks, sharp and endless. A final thought lingered, not Jane's but the neighborhood's, spoken in its new silences. Change begins when one person dares to be seen, and another dares to see them differently. Green Oaks had dared, and a new dawn had come. And so Green Oaks finds its new dawn, shaped by Jane's courage and a community's choice to grow. What did this story stir in you? Did it spark anger, hope, or a question about the world around? Share your thoughts in the comments, your voice matters. We're deeply grateful for joining us on this journey, for listening, reflecting, and daring to see differently. Thank you for being part of our storytelling family. Until next time, keep your heart open and your eyes wide. We'll meet again, soon with another tale that challenges, inspires, and connects us all. Stay curious and see you then. She'd sent an email to the neighborhood listserv at dawn, inviting every resident to her backyard at 3:00 p.m. for an open conversation. Let's talk about what happened, about inclusion, about moving forward, she wrote, her words deliberate, inviting. Jane arranged folding chairs in a semicircle by the pool, a pitcher of iced tea on a table, jazz playing softly from her speakers. Coltrane again, a nod to the moment she'd been interrupted. She wasn't here to accuse, but to build. Green Oaks, she knew, could be more than its prejudices if given a chance. By 2:45, neighbors trickled in, their footsteps hesitant on the stone path to Jane's yard. Carolyn Thompson, the retired teacher with a steel backbone, arrived first, her gray hair catching the light as she shook Jane's hand. "You're doing the right thing," she said, her voice firm. Ethan, 16, followed with his parents, his phone tucked away, but his eyes bright with pride. His video had shifted the tide, and Jane's warm nod to him said more than words could. Others came, Mr. Singh, the Wilsons, even Carol Ferguson, whose gaze darted nervously, her earlier allegiance to Margaret now a quiet shame. Margaret Kessler, meanwhile, sat frozen in her living room, the summons from Jane's lawsuit a lead weight on her coffee table. The neighborhood Facebook group was a graveyard of her influence. Her fabricated video debunked by Ethan's evidence, her lies laid bare. The news had broken at noon. Arlington neighbor faces $10,000 fine for defaming FBI director. Margaret was ordered to post public apologies on every platform she'd used to slander Jane. A humiliation that stung worse than the fine. Her husband's words echoed, "What have you done?" As neighbors' texts went unanswered, Carol's "you went too far," the final nail. Margaret's porch, once her throne, felt like a prison. At 3:00, Jane faced the gathered crowd, some 20 neighbors, their faces a mix of curiosity, guilt, and hope. The pool sparkled behind her, a silent witness to her ordeal. "I'm Jane Hernandez," she began, her voice clear, resonant. "I moved here for a fresh start, but yesterday I was treated like a criminal in my own home because of a call rooted in bias." She paused, letting the words settle. "I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here to ask, what kind of community do we want to be? Carolyn spoke up, her tone fierce but measured. We've let people like Margaret Kessler run things too, long, judging who belongs. Jane, you've shown more grace than we deserve. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, though Carol shifted uncomfortably, her silence a confession. Ethan's mom added, that video, my son's video, showed the truth. We need to face it. Ethan blushed, but his chin lifted, his role no longer just a kid's whim. Jane shared her story, not just the incident, but her life as a black woman leading the BAU, navigating rooms where she was underestimated, profiled, and dismissed. I've chased serial killers, she said, a wry smile breaking through. But nothing prepared me for being a suspect in my backyard. The crowd chuckled, then fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. She ended with a call to action. Let's make Green Oaks a place where no one's judged for their skin or their silence. Start today. Start with us. Across town, the Arlington police station buzzed with fallout. The chief, battered by media scrutiny, issued a public statement at 3:30. Officers Ronald Baxter and James Cutler are suspended for 6 months without pay, effective immediately, for improper conduct in the Hernandez incident. They will undergo mandatory anti-racism training and sign no repeat offense agreements, with termination as the consequence for future violations. Baxter, holed up in his office, stared at the statement on his phone, his career crumbling. Cutler, in a bar across town, downed a beer, muttering about just following orders. The world had no patience for their excuses. Back in Green Oaks, the meeting stretched past an hour, neighbors sharing stories of exclusion, fear, and hope. Mr. Singh spoke of slurs scrawled on his truck years ago. The Wilsons admitted ignoring. Subtle biases. Carol, voice trembling, said, I believed Margaret at first. I'm sorry, Jane. Jane nodded, her eyes kind but firm. We all get it wrong sometimes. What matters is what you do next. As the crowd dispersed, Jane stood alone by the pool, the chairs empty, the tea pitcher drained. The jazz played, on a quiet triumph. She felt the weight of the day, the lawsuit, the meeting, the eyes of Green Oaks on her. She slipped inside, dialing her BAU colleague Marcus, her voice soft but raw. It's exhausting, you know, being the one who has to fix it. Marcus's reply was steady. You're not just fixing it, Jane. You're rewriting it. She smiled, the knot in her chest loosening. Margaret, watching from her window, saw the neighbors leave Jane's yard, their faces lighter, their steps purposeful. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Hernandez lawsuit moves forward. Kessler faces criminal charges. Evidence tampering, defamation. The words blurred as panic tightened her throat. She imagined the apologies she'd have to post, the neighbors' stares, her family's shame. Green Oaks, her kingdom, was no longer hers. Jane, back by the pool, looked across the street, catching a glimpse of Margaret's silhouette. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. The truth was out, and Green Oaks was waking up. But Jane knew this wasn't the end. Margaret's next move, whatever it was, would test them all. The evening sky over Green Oaks on May 11th, 2025, burned with streaks of amber, casting long shadows across Jane Hernandez's backyard. The pool glowed like liquid gold, its surface unbroken, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had gripped the neighborhood. Jane stood near the patio, her white blouse catching the fading light, her long, straight hair loose and swaying in the breeze. Her second community gathering was about to begin, a follow-up to the afternoon's raw honesty, and the air hummed with anticipation. Folding chairs were filled with neighbors, Carolyn Thompson, Ethan and his parents, Mr. Singh, and others, drawn by Jane's call for change. The jazz was softer tonight, a gentle underscore to the weight of what was to come. Inside her home across the street, Margaret Kessler stood before a mirror, her reflection a stranger. The summons for Jane's lawsuit, the $10,000 fine, and the court-ordered apologies had stripped her bare. The neighborhood Facebook group, once her domain, now buzzed with calls for her to face Jane. Her husband's voice, sharp with frustration, echoed from breakfast. "Go, Margaret. Fix this, or we're done here." Her hands shook as she smoothed her cardigan, her tortoiseshell glasses fogging with unshed tears. She'd been Green Oak's gatekeeper, but now she was its outcast, and the path to redemption or ruin led to Jane's backyard. At 7 p.m., Jane addressed the crowd, her voice steady, resonant. "Yesterday I was a stranger to you, judged before I could speak. Today we're here to build something better." Her eyes scanned the faces, landing on Carolyn's nod, Ethan's quiet pride. "Change starts when we face the truth, even when it hurts." The words hung heavy, a challenge and an invitation. Neighbors murmured, their earlier stories of bias and regret still fresh from the afternoon. Margaret appeared at the gate, her steps faltering, her face pale under the porch light's glare. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Carol's gasp. Mr. Singh's frown. Jane saw her, her expression unreadable, and raised a hand for silence. "Margaret," she said, her tone neither warm nor cold. "Come in." Margaret shuffled forward, standing at the crowd's edge, her hands clasped like a shield. The chairs creaked, the air thickened, and every eye fixed on her. Margaret's voice cracked, her gaze dropping to the grass. "I'm sorry. Jane, I called the police because I was scared of change, of someone I didn't know." The words were stilted, rehearsed, but a tremor betrayed her. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." She looked up, meeting Jane's eyes, and for a moment the neighborhood held its breath. Jane stepped closer, her presence commanding. "You didn't just call the police, Margaret. You lied, fabricated evidence, tried to paint me as a threat because I didn't fit your idea of Green Oaks." Her voice was calm, but each word cut. "But you have a chance to do better. Take it." She held Margaret's gaze, not offering forgiveness, but a door, slightly ajar. Carolyn nodded, her approval a quiet anchor, while Carol looked away, grappling with her complicity. Margaret swallowed, her face flushing, and stepped back, the weight of Jane's words settling like dust. The crowd was silent, not absolving but witnessing, a community reckoning with its flaws. Jane turned to the group, her voice lifting. "We're starting a Green Oaks diversity initiative, workshops, discussions, a commitment to inclusion. Ethan's offered to run the online side." Ethan grinned, his parents beaming. "This isn't about one incident, it's about who we choose to be." Applause broke out, tentative at first, then strong, a promise taking root. Margaret, now glued to her tablet, stumbled across the viral video. Her breath caught as she saw herself on screen, nodding to Baxter, her voice faint but damning. "She's back there, acting like she owns the place." The comments tore into, "Her by racist busybody and mind your own business," each one a dagger to her self-image. Panic clawed at her chest. She couldn't be wrong, not publicly, not like this. She opened the group again, typing furiously, "She's dangerous. She threatened me during the incident." The lie grew bolder, a desperate shield against the truth closing in. Jane, unaware of Margaret's latest post, stood by her pool, the night air cool against her skin. The jazz was off, replaced by the distant hum of Green Oaks settling into evening. She thought of the officer's smirks, Margaret's unseen hand behind the call, and the video now burning through the internet. Her anger hardened into resolve. She'd faced serial killers, broken their minds open like locks. This fight against prejudice, against erasure, was just as vital. She wouldn't let Green Oaks define her as anything less than who she was. Ethan, back in his room, watched the view count climb past 100,000. A direct message from a news outlet asked for an interview. He hesitated, then replied, "Only if you focus on Jane." The match he'd lit was now ablaze, and Green Oaks would never be the same. Margaret, alone, stared at her phone, the group's replies turning cold. Carolyn's latest comment cut deepest. "Margaret, stop lying. You're making this worse." The neighborhood she'd ruled was slipping away, and her next move would either save her or destroy her. The morning sun rose over Green Oaks on May 11th, 2025, casting a harsh light on Margaret Kessler's living room, where shadows clung to her like guilt. Her tablet glowed, the neighborhood Facebook group a battlefield of accusations and doubt. Her latest post, claiming Jane Hernandez had threatened her during the police confrontation, had backfired, met with skepticism from neighbors like Carolyn Thompson, whose sharp rebuke, "Margaret, stop lying," burned in her mind. The viral video, now at 200,000 views, had exposed her call to the police, her smug words to Officer Baxter looping endlessly online. "She's acting like she owns the place." Margaret's fingers trembled as she scrolled through the comments. "Racist. Shame on you." Each one a crack in her carefully crafted image. She wasn't wrong, she told herself. She couldn't be. Green Oaks was hers to protect, and Jane, with her red bikini and unshakable calm, was a threat to that order. In her desperation, Margaret made a fateful choice. She opened a video editing app, her hands unsteady but driven by a need to reclaim control. The original footage of Jane by the pool, serene and unthreatening, was too tame. Margaret spliced in audio from a crime show she'd watched, a woman's, voice shouting, "Stay away or you'll regret it," and synced it to Jane's image, creating a 2-minute clip that painted her as volatile, dangerous. She posted it to the Facebook group at 7:32 a.m., her caption bold. "This is who we're dealing with at 27. She's a danger to Green Oaks." Her heart pounded as she hit send, a flicker of triumph drowning out the doubt. This, she thought, would turn the tide. Across the street, Jane Hernandez stood in her kitchen, the scent of coffee mingling with the quiet hum of her new home. Her silk robe draped over her shoulders, her long, straight hair pulled into a loose bun. She'd seen the viral video, felt the internet's outrage like a pulse, but Margaret's latest lie hadn't yet reached her. Jane sipped her coffee, her tablet open to emails from her BAU assistant Sarah, who'd compiled a dossier on Officers Baxter and Cutler's prior bias complaints. Jane's eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the evidence. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was dismantling a system that let prejudice fester. Her phone buzzed with a text from an FBI legal advisor. "Ready to file against the caller?" Jane typed back, "Yes, defamation. Get it done." At 8:15, Ethan, 16, woke to a phone buzzing like a hornet's nest. His Twitter notifications had exploded overnight, his video now at 300,000 views, trending with engendered justice for Jane. Bleary-eyed, he opened the neighborhood group and froze. Margaret's new video loaded, Jane's image warped by the fake audio, the threatening voice jarring against her calm demeanor. Ethan's stomach churned. He knew a lie when he saw one. Logging into his laptop, he ran the video through editing software, checking metadata and audio tracks. Within 20 minutes, he'd isolated the spliced audio, its timestamp mismatched, its source a cheap overlay. He posted his findings on Twitter and the Facebook group. "Margaret's video is fake. Here's the proof." A screenshot of the metadata and a side-by-side comparison followed, his evidence airtight. By 9 Ethan's post had 5,000 shares. The backlash was swift, merciless. Twitter erupted with gag or Margaret lies, users dissecting her video frame by frame. A local news outlet ran a segment at 9:30. Arlington neighbor falsifies video against FBI Director Jane Hernandez. Carolyn Thompson, interviewed outside her home, spoke with quiet fury. "Margaret's always played gatekeeper, but this is shameful. She's hurt us all." Neighbors who'd once nodded at Margaret's gossip, Carol Ferguson among them, fell silent, their likes on her post vanishing as the truth spread. Jane, alerted by Sarah, watched Margaret's fabricated video at 10 gas. Her jaw tightened, but her resolve was iron. She called her legal advisor, adding evidence tampering to the defamation suit. The FBI's legal team moved fast, filing a complaint with the Arlington DA by noon, citing reputational harm and criminal intent. Jane stood by her pool, the water still as glass, and thought of her mother, who'd taught her to turn pain into power. This wasn't just about Green Oaks. It was about every black woman told she didn't belong. She wouldn't let Margaret's lies stand. At the Arlington police station, the air was thick with tension. Internal Affairs had launched a probe into Baxter and Cutler, their records a litany of warnings for racial bias. By 11 size, the chief, under pressure from the viral story, announced their suspension, 6 months without pay, mandatory anti-racism, training, and a signed agreement to avoid future violations, with termination as the penalty for non-compliance. Baxter, in his office, slammed a fist on his desk, his career teetering. Cutler, pacing the locker room, muttered, "It was just a call." But the world was watching, and their excuses held no weight. Margaret's world unraveled by midday. Her phone buzzed with notifications, but she couldn't look. Carol, once her ally, texted, "You went too far." The group's comments were a flood of condemnation, Carolyn's voice leading the charge, "Apologize, Margaret, or leave." At 12:30, a process server knocked on her door, delivering a summons for Jane's lawsuit. Margaret's hands shook as she read the charges. Defamation, evidence tampering, and potential fines of $10,000. Her husband, silent until now, stared at her. "What have you done?" he whispered, the weight of their isolation settling in. Ethan, now a local hero, fielded messages from reporters but kept his focus on Jane. He sent her a direct message. "I'm sorry this happened. Your video's changing things." Jane, reading it by her pool, smiled faintly. She replied, "You changed it, Ethan. Thank you." The teenager's courage had shifted the narrative, and Jane felt a spark of hope amid the chaos. Margaret, alone, sat on her porch, the binoculars untouched, her tea long gone. The neighborhood she'd ruled was turning against her, the comments now calling for her to leave Green Oaks. She opened her tablet, fingers hovering over a new post, a final bid to salvage her name. But the summons lay on her table, a reminder that lies had consequences, and hers were closing in fast. Jane, back in her kitchen, looked out at Green Oaks, the sun high and unforgiving. She wasn't done fighting, not for herself, not for justice. The lawsuit was just the beginning, and she'd see it through no matter what Margaret tried next. The afternoon sun bathed Green Oaks in a golden haze on May 11th, 2025, but the warmth couldn't soften the chill that had settled over the neighborhood. Jane Hernandez stood in her backyard, the pool a mirror of calm that belied the storm she'd weathered. Her silk robe was gone, replaced by a crisp white blouse and jeans, her long straight hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. The viral video, now at 500,000 views, had torn through Arlington like wildfire, exposing Margaret Kessler's lies and the bias of officers Baxter and Cutler. Jane's defamation lawsuit, filed hours ago, hung over Green Oaks like a gathering cloud. But today she wasn't fighting in courtrooms or online. She was reclaiming her home, her voice, her place. In her sanctuary, Jane Hernandez sensed the shift before she heard it. The jazz still played, Coltrane's notes weaving through the warm air, but a faint creak, the gate, pierced her calm. She lowered her sunglasses, her dark eyes narrowing, as two shadows stretched across the pool deck. Officers Baxter and Cutler stepped into view, their silhouettes stark against the shimmering water. Jane's heart steadied, her years at the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit sharpening her instincts. She sat up, her book sliding to the lounger, and faced them. "Ma'am," Baxter barked, his voice cutting through the music. "We're responding to a trespassing report. Who are you and what are you doing here?" Jane's lips curved, not a smile but a challenge. "I'm Jane Hernandez. This is my home. I bought it last week." Her voice was steady, polished, carrying the weight of someone who'd faced worse than this. Cutler snorted, his smirk widening. "Got proof of that? ID, maybe?" His tone dripped with skepticism, his eyes raking over her bikini, her book, her ease. Jane tilted her head, her long hair catching the light. "I'm happy to provide it, but let me ask, do you always storm into private yards demanding ID from homeowners relaxing by their pools? Or is this special treatment, Her words were calm, but each one landed like a dart. Baxter's jaw tightened. "Don't get smart. We got a call. Show us ID or we're taking you in." Behind the fence, Margaret strained to hear, her heart racing with vindication. She whispered to Carol Ferguson, who'd joined her, "See, she's arguing. Guilty people do that." Carol nodded, uncertain but swayed by Margaret's conviction. Ethan, still recording, angled his phone through the fence slats, capturing Jane's composed figure against the officer's looming presence. His stomach twisted. This wasn't right. Jane's red bikini stood out like a flag of defiance, her posture unshaken despite the threat. He kept filming, his thumb steady. Jane rose, her movements deliberate, and walked to a small patio table. From a leather tote, she retrieved her wallet, pulling out her driver's license and FBI badge. The badge gleamed, its seal unmistakable. Jane Hernandez, director of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. I've been profiling criminals for a decade, so I know a setup when I see 1. Here's my ID. Care to explain why you're here? Cutler's smirk faltered, but he recovered, snatching the badge. This could be fake. Anyone can buy these online. His voice wavered, betraying a flicker of doubt. Jane's eyes locked on his. Fake? Call Quantico. They'll confirm I'm running point on a serial case right now, or check the deed. My name's on it. But you didn't, did you? You just took her word. She nodded toward the fence where Margaret's shadow lingered. Baxter shifted, his hand still near his holster. We're doing our job. Neighbor says you don't belong. We're checking it out. Your job? Jane's voice sharpened, though her calm held. Your job is to verify before you intimidate. I'm a black woman in my backyard, and you're treating me like a suspect because of a phone call. That's not procedure. That's prejudice. Cutler's face reddened. Watch it, lady. Keep talking and we'll cuff you for resisting. Jane didn't flinch. Try it. See how fast this escalates. She reached for her phone, dialing her assistant at the BAU. Hey, Sarah. Send the deed for 27 Green Oaks to Arlington PD now, and log this incident. Her tone was ice, her authority undeniable. Ethan's camera caught it all. Jane's unyielding stance, Cutler's nervous glance at Baxter, the faint jazz underscoring the standoff. He uploaded a clip to his private cloud, his heart pounding. This was bigger than Margaret's gossip. Margaret, oblivious, whispered to Carol, "She's stalling. They'll get her." But a sliver of doubt crept in. Why wasn't the woman running? Why was she so calm? Baxter's radio crackled, the dispatcher's voice faint. He stepped back, muttering to Cutler, "If that badge is real, we're screwed." Cutler shook his head, stubborn. "She's bluffing. Let's take her in, sort it out at the station." Jane overheard, her eyes narrowing. "You're making a mistake, officers, a big one." She set her phone down, the call still active, and crossed her arms, her badge glinting like a shield. The pool's ripples danced. The jazz played on and the air grew heavier, as if Green Oaks itself held its breath. The jazz in Jane Hernandez's backyard faded to a soft hum as the police cruiser's engine roared to life, its tires spitting gravel as it pulled away from 27 Green Oaks. Officers Ronald Baxter and James Cutler, their faces tight with unease, had just retreated, their half-hearted apology to Jane hanging in the air like a bitter aftertaste. The email from the FBI, confirming Jane as the director of the Behavioral Analysis Unit and the rightful owner of the house, had landed in their precinct's inbox like a guillotine. Jane stood by her pool, her red bikini a defiant blaze against the fading sunlight, her arms crossed and her eyes locked on the departing cruiser. "This isn't over," she said, her voice low, a promise to herself as much as to the officers. Inside her home, Jane set her phone down, the call to her assistant, Sarah, still echoing in her mind. She'd logged the incident, ensured the deed was sent, but the weight of it, another moment of being seen as less than as other, pressed against her chest. She'd faced worse in her decade at the BAU, profiling monsters who hid in plain sight. But this was different. This was her home, her sanctuary, tainted by prejudice before she'd even unpacked her last box. Jane's long, straight hair fell over her shoulders as she leaned against the patio table, her reflection rippling in the pool. She wasn't shaken, but she was angry. And anger, she knew, could be a blade if wielded right. Across the street, Margaret Kessler's porch was no longer a throne but a cage. Her hands trembled as she clutched her iced tea, now warm and forgotten, her eyes darting between the empty street and her phone. The officers hadn't stopped to debrief her, hadn't offered the triumphant nod she'd expected. Instead, they'd driven off, their silence louder than any reprimand. Carol Ferguson, still lingering by the fence, whispered, "Maybe she does. Live there, Margaret." Margaret's jaw tightened, her voice sharp. "She doesn't belong, you'll see." But doubt gnawed at her, a splinter she couldn't ignore. Unseen, Ethan, 16, sat cross-legged on his bedroom floor, his phone glowing with the video he'd captured. The footage was raw, unpolished. Margaret's smug exchange with the officers, their heavy steps into Jane's yard, Jane's unflinching stance as she held up her FBI badge. Ethan's heart raced as he edited the clip, trimming it to 2 minutes of undeniable truth. His fingers hovered over Twitter, the hashtag, racial profiling, already typed. He wasn't sure what would happen, but he knew this mattered. With a deep breath, he hit post, the video launching into the digital ether at 5:17 p.m. on May 10, 2025. By 5:30, the video had 200 views. By 6 it had 2,000. A user named JusticeSeeker22 retweeted it, writing, "Is this the FBI's Jane Hernandez getting harassed in her yard?" Another user, ACNN Fanatic, recognized Jane from a recent BAU interview on CNN and tagged the FBI's official account. The tweet exploded, racking up 10,000 retweets by 7Y. Ethan stared at his phone, notifications flooding in, his stomach a knot of awe and fear. He'd lit a match, and Green Oaks was about to catch fire. Jane, now in a silk robe, sat at her kitchen counter, scrolling through Twitter on her tablet. The video loaded, and she watched herself, calm, resolute, badge gleaming, facing down, Baxter and Cutler. The comments were a storm. Outrage, cops harassing a black woman at home, support, Jane Hernandez is a hero, and calls for justice, fire those officers. Jane's lips pressed into a thin line. She hadn't asked for this spotlight, but she wouldn't shy from it. She texted Sarah, "Monitor this, we're filing a formal complaint tomorrow." Then she stood, her reflection in the window a silhouette of strength, ready to turn this violation into a reckoning. Margaret, oblivious to the digital tidal wave, paced her living room, her phone buzzing with notifications from the neighborhood Facebook group. Her earlier post, "Does anyone know this woman? Looks suspicious by Runner 27's pool," had sparked a dozen comments, but the tone was shifting. Carolyn Thompson, a retired teacher with a no-nonsense air, wrote, "Margaret, did you even check if she owns the place? This feels wrong." Others chimed in, questioning her haste. Margaret's cheeks burned. She typed a reply, her fingers shaking. She was threatening, arguing with the police. "I'm protecting us." It was a lie, but lies felt safer than doubt. By 8 Ethan's video had hit 50,000 views, picked up by a local news outlet. A reporter's tweet read, "Breaking. Arlington PD confronts FBI Director Jane Hernandez in her backyard after neighbors call. Racial profiling is alleged." The story spread to national blogs, each headline sharper than the last. Ethan's parents, stunned, called him to the living room. "You did the right thing," his mom said, her voice proud but worried. Ethan nodded, his phone still buzzing, his role no longer invisible. A brilliant black FBI powerhouse lounges by her Virginia pool, unaware that 2 prejudiced cops are charging into her backyard, hands on holsters, accusing her of trespassing in her own home. A neighbor's racist call ignited this injustice, branding her a stranger for simply existing. Harassed and misjudged, she stands firm, wielding her badge and unyielding resolve to confront the bias head-on. Will her defiance shatter the lies, or will prejudice prevail? Stay tuned to uncover the truth. If you crave stories of courage, hit that subscribe button for our latest episodes, and comment where you're watching from. Who fueled this betrayal? Can a community unlearn its biases? Join us to unravel this saga of resilience. You'll be stunned by what unfolds. The sun hung heavy over Green Oaks, Arlington, Virginia, on a sultry May afternoon in 2025, its golden rays glinting off manicured lawns and polished mailboxes. In this enclave of privilege, where every hedge was trimmed to perfection and every driveway gleamed, one woman sat as sentinel. Margaret Kessler, 48, perched on her porch like a queen on her throne, her floral sundress crisp despite the heat. Her eyes, sharp behind tortoiseshell glasses, scanned the street with the precision of a hawk. A pair of binoculars rested on the wicker table beside her iced tea, their lenses catching the light like a silent warning. To Margaret, Green Oaks wasn't just a neighborhood. It was her domain and its unspoken guardian. She knew every detail: the Thompsons' tardy trash bins, the Wilsons' overgrown azaleas, the exact shade of blue on Mr. Singh's pickup truck. Margaret noticed if a stranger's car lingered too long, or a new face appeared without a proper introduction. She remembered, and she acted. Her phone, always within reach, was her scepter, ready to dial the non-emergency line or post to the neighborhood Facebook group. To her, vigilance wasn't just a habit, it was a calling. Someone has to keep standards, she'd mutter, sipping her tea, her lips pursed in quiet triumph. Today, her gaze drifted to the house at 27 Green Oaks, a sleek two-story with a pool that shimmered like a sapphire under the sun. The for sale sign had vanished a week ago, yet the blinds remained shut. The driveway empty save for a single black sedan that appeared overnight. No moving trucks, no welcoming casseroles, no neighborly waves. Margaret's fingers twitched. Change, unannounced and unapproved, was an affront to her order. Then she saw her. Across the street, in the backyard of number 27, a woman reclined. On a cushioned lounger by the pool, Jane Hernandez, 31, was a vision of effortless grace. Her skin, a rich mahogany, glowed under the sunlight, and her long, straight hair cascaded over her shoulders like a dark river. A red bikini hugged her frame, bold and unapologetic, while oversized sunglasses shielded her eyes. A glass of lemonade sat within reach, condensation beading on its surface, and a book, profiling the criminal mind, lay open on her lap. Soft jazz drifted from outdoor speakers, its mellow notes weaving through the air like a private serenade. Jane's lips curved in a faint smile as she turned a page, utterly at ease in her new sanctuary. To Margaret, that ease was a provocation. Who was this woman, lounging as if she owned the place, without so much as a nod to the neighborhood's unwritten code? Green Oaks demanded introductions, block parties, polite hellos, a chance for Margaret to vet newcomers. This stranger had offered none. Margaret leaned forward, her chair creaking, and reached for her binoculars. Through the lenses, Jane's details sharpened. The elegant curve of her jaw, the deliberate way she sipped her drink, the absence of any furtive glances. Too calm, Margaret thought. Too comfortable. Her mind raced. The house had belonged to the Pattersons, a retired couple who'd fled to Florida's warmth. Margaret had baked them a lemon loaf when they moved in, though she'd never gotten the pan back. She'd seen the sale close, the paperwork filed, but no one had mentioned this woman. A tenant? A squatter? Worse? Margaret's pulse quickened, her imagination painting Jane as an intruder who'd slipped through some crack in the system. She set the binoculars down, her hands trembling with purpose, and grabbed her phone. Fingers hovering over the screen, she hesitated. What if she was wrong? The thought was fleeting, dismissed by years of self-assured judgment. She opened the IDOP neighborhood Facebook group, her thumbs flying as she uploaded a shaky video of Jane by the pool. The caption read, "Does anyone know this woman? Looks suspicious by 3 or 27's pool." Comments pinged almost instantly. Carol Ferguson's "Never seen her," and a vague "Check the gate" from someone else. Emboldened, Margaret scrolled to her contacts, found the non-emergency line, and pressed call. "Arlington Police, how can I assist you?" The dispatcher's voice was clipped professional. Margaret cleared her throat, adopting the syrupy tone she reserved for authority. "This is Margaret Kessler, Green Oaks. I'm reporting a possible trespasser at 27 Green Oaks, the old Patterson place. There's a woman, black, about 30, in a bikini, lounging by the pool like she owns it. I've never seen her before, and I know everyone here. She might have broken in through the back gate." "Any signs of forced entry, ma'am?" the dispatcher asked. "No, but she's too relaxed. It's not right. I've got video if you need it." Margaret's voice tightened, her conviction hardening. "Description of the woman?" "Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair, long, straight, red swimsuit. Reading a book, acting like she belongs." Margaret glanced at Jane again, still serene, oblivious to the storm brewing across the street. "We'll send officers to check it out." "TA 10 minutes. Margaret hung up, a flush of satisfaction warming her cheeks. She stood, smoothing her dress, and stepped behind a flowering crepe myrtle for a better view. Jane sipped her lemonade, her head tilting slightly to the jazz's rhythm. The pool's surface rippled, catching the sun in a dance of light. Everything about her screamed ownership, but Margaret had already decided this woman didn't belong. Unseen, another pair of eyes watched. Ethan, 16, leaned against his bedroom window across the street, his phone idle in his hand. He'd seen Margaret's post, her smug commentary, and the way she clutched her phone like a weapon. Something about it gnawed at him. The new neighbor seemed harmless, happy and even. Why was Margaret so rattled? Ethan's fingers hovered over his camera app, a quiet instinct stirring. Back on her porch, Margaret sat, arms crossed, her tea forgotten. The air felt thicker now, charged with anticipation. She imagined the police arriving, the woman's shock, the vindication of her call. Green Oaks would thank her, as it always did, for keeping watch. But beneath her certainty, a faint unease flickered. What if the woman did live there? Margaret pushed the thought away, her jaw tightening. She was never wrong. The distant hum of a police cruiser broke the silence, growing louder as it turned onto Green Oaks. Margaret's heart leaped. 10 minutes had passed, and her moment was here. The police cruiser's low growl cut through. The lazy hum of Green Oaks, its tires crunching gravel as it rolled to a stop outside 27 Green Oaks. Margaret Kessler's pulse thrummed with anticipation, her fingers gripping the edge of her porch chair. From behind her crepe myrtle, she watched the black and white vehicle glint under the May sun, a symbol of her authority vindicated. The air was thick with heat and expectation, the jazz from the stranger's backyard now a faint, defiant melody. Margaret's lips curled. Soon, this interloper would learn her place. Inside the cruiser, officers Ronald Baxter and James Cutler exchanged a glance. Baxter, a hulking man in his late 40s with a jaw like granite, adjusted his sunglasses, his expression sour. Cutler, younger, leaner, with a smirk that never quite faded, tapped the dashboard. Both carried the weight of prior complaints, whispers of bias brushed off as misunderstandings. Margaret's call was routine, another day of asserting order. "Probably some drifter," Cutler muttered. Baxter grunted, stepping out, his boots heavy on the pavement. Across the street, Ethan, 16, pressed closer to his bedroom window, his phone now recording. Margaret's smug posture, her quick nod to the officers, set his teeth on edge. The new neighbor hadn't done anything, just sat by her pool, minding her own business. Ethan zoomed in, capturing Baxter's broad frame as he approached Margaret. "Are you the caller?" Baxter's voice was a low rumble. "Yes, officer," Margaret said, her tone syrupy, practiced. "She's back there by the pool. Black woman, red bikini, acting like she owns the place. I've got video." She gestured toward the wooden fence, her eyes gleaming with certainty. Baxter nodded, not bothering to ask for details. Cutler joined him, and they moved toward the backyard gate, their hands resting near their holsters. Ethan's camera followed, his breath shallow. Something was wrong. He could feel it.